Hi, Krisserin.
Hello. Hi, Kelton.
How are you?
I'm so glad that this week is over or almost over. I just feel like these last days of school are a death rattle. It is just so much to do and I'm tired. And I started my period. I know we love to share that, but I literally slept like 2.5 hours in the middle of the day on Wednesday. I've just been exhausted.
Krisserin, I think we're synced up.
Oh gosh. Cycle synced from thousands of miles away.
It's only like 800 miles, okay? The moon can find us.
I'm Krisserin Canary.
And I'm Kelton Wright.
Follow our quest to publish our first novels
From first drafts to query letters
through inevitable rejection
and hopefully eventual success.
from California.
To Colorado. This is Pen Pals. I'm sorry it was such a hard week. I don't even remember this week. I had a lot of calls that went nowhere, you know? But it's almost warm here. Every day is in the 50s. Like, none of the leaves are out here yet, but down valley the leaves are out, so it's starting to really feel like the season is upon us. I am excited.
Ready to get outside, the one reprieve. That's incredible. I love it's the aspens you're talking about, right? The
Yeah.
the dancing leaves. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting older or if I just drank too much in my like 38 years before I quit drinking. But I just feel like my brain isn't working the way that it used to. And I literally woke up this morning and I was like, oh, I feel rested. And I didn't wear my watch last night, so I don't know how much sleep I got. And I was like, when did I go to sleep? Did I go to sleep early? Did I go to sleep late? Like, I can't even remember the smallest details of my life. I'm like, is something happening to my brain? Should I be concerned? Do I need more adaptogens? Do I need to take more functional mushrooms or something? I don't know. Well, it sounds like we both had exciting weeks. How did your. Why are you laughing?
We both had such exciting weeks. We both got our periods and barely survived. What excitement we had.
Man, yeah, it's crazy. I was thinking about it and it's like this thing is just it feels like it's always here. I'm like, didn't this just happen? Time is an illusion. Maybe that's why women were revered because we were the only thing that could actually like mark the passage of time in a way that was tangible.
I like this. This is your next novel is like women as calendars.
I I have a theory, but we won't get into it now. I did see that you got out and about with Woods, and in your newsletter, you talked about how actually this vocalizing your book has been working. So, has it been working? Talk to me about it.
Yeah, my goal last week was to continue narrating scenes into my phone while hiking with the child. And I did do that. And one thing I've had to let go of is it being good. Like it's narrating is so different from writing it. When you're writing it, there's so much live editing happening. It's so much like moving sentences around, changing how you phrase it, thinking it through on the page. And narrating out loud, if I pause for too long, the microphone stops. And then I have to be like, no, I'm still talking. And the narration into the Apple Notes app, and I am open to suggestions on this. The narration into the Apple Notes app is so bad. It is so bad. And I know there's got to be better software out there. But I need it to not need the internet or data. Like I am in the deep wilderness. It needs to just work on my phone. So if you have a suggestion, sorry, there's cat hair all over my face. I am open to it. Because what I have not done yet, and I'm sort of dreading, is moving these scenes from the Notes app into Scrivener and editing them. But I can see that it doesn't even know the name of my character. It switches between calling her friend and Brent. And I'm like, all right, I know whenever it says that, that's Bren's name. But that part is tricky. but it has been really fruitful to keep momentum and to be thinking through what happens next and what happens next. And maybe once I do actually go into fixing it, it'll just be like the editing stage, like it would have been anyways. So I'm really grateful that I've been doing that and for your prompting of it. Cause yeah, it's keeping me going. But I will say, gosh, my progress has been really slow. Everybody knows that. Everybody that's been listening and thinking about giving you a first draft by the end of the summer, I'm like, I gotta really, I gotta make some steps. I gotta make some changes, but I still want to hit that goal. I'm not gonna back down from it yet, but I still want to hit it. And I have to say, one of the highlights of my week was getting your email about why to read your book. Sorry, before you talk about it, I have to talk about it
Okay.
because it was really good and it has all the bones and some of the marrow necessary for a query letter. And so I don't know why you're so afraid of the query letter other than the fact that they're just, it's a challenging writing assignment, but you convinced me in your letter to me to read a book that is in a genre I don't like. It's not even a genre I don't care about. It's a genre I don't like. And like I was like, I want to read this book. You sold me on your characters. You sold me on what it's gonna do. So tell our beloved listeners what it was like, how you did it.
Well, it's
If
so
I
funny
find
that
out
you.
you used AI to write it, I'll
No,
kill
of
you.
course I would never. No. I don't use it for generative purposes ever because, like I said, I feel like I would just be cheating myself. But it's so funny that you say it's a genre that you don't even like because as I've been reading in it, I don't know if I like it either. So
The
I
genre,
have
not your book.
the genre, not my book.
Yeah.
So literally Luster is sitting here since the last time you and I spoke and recorded this podcast. I did try to read Emma Cline's The Guest, and I was instantly put off by it because it's about a 22-year-old sex
Mm.
worker that is just kind of popping pills, and I don't know what's going on in her life. So I need to find other comps, I think, that resonate more closely with my story. But, we're going to talk about querying today. But writing a query letter is so different than what I did with you. And not to admit that I am manipulative in any way, shape, or form, but I know you. And so I wrote the letter to you and you said,
Mm.
convince me. I can find the parts of my story that I think are going to resonate with you. And that's why I wrote it in a way so that I could get you on board with reading my book by appealing to the types of characters or my main character that has traits in her that I know that you would respond to. And so it was really fun writing that letter. It was very similar to the exercise that I did a couple of weeks ago where I wrote a letter to the readers, which ended up kind of being something that I said I would put in the acknowledgments. It is helping me clarify and crystallize the heart of the idea of the book. So all of this is like getting me into rhythm. And yes, it definitely can help with the query letter, but the query letter is such a different beast than what I wrote to you, which felt very much more human and narrative and structure than what a query letter is, which feels like marketing lingo yucky speak, which I hate,
Well, we
you
should
know.
tell the listeners I've not queried. I've not queried anything. I've barely applied to things. So this is a type of letter that I have read a bunch. I love reading other people's query letters. I love seeing success stories with query letters. But I am on the outside of this, and you have actually written query letters. So for me, when I read your letter to me, convincing me to read your book, in my mind, it functions kind of like a cover letter where your cover letter, if you have the same cover letter for every company and you drop and drag the company names, like it's not a great cover letter. Putting aside the fact that no one reads cover letters, blah, blah, blah. Back in the era when they did, the more custom a cover letter was to that company, the better it would succeed. So when you're saying that you wrote that letter for me specifically, you're sort of just, in my mind, doing that for every agent. but you just don't know them as well as you know me. So it's harder to know what to sell them on. But since I am a novice, not even, I haven't even started, since I am a non contender so far in the query space, tell me your journey with querying so far.
Sure. And I'm happy to talk about it, but I've also not done it successfully. So, I mean, I'm happy to talk about kind of like what I've learned and what I've done. But the truth is that it is a little bit of a numbers game, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
this is the second time that I've queried. And the first time I queried far fewer people. It was a long time ago. So, the technology that exists now didn't really exist in the same forms as it did back when I first queried, and there definitely wasn't any AI back then. But Publishers Marketplace has within it a list of all of the agents and who they represent and the structure of the deals that they have had. And so you can filter based on, okay, who has sold a book in the last year, how big were their deals, who do they represent, what genres do they represent. And so that's really where I started my research, is trying to figure out, okay, when I was querying Unforgettable, which is a new adult speculative fiction novel, who's representing speculative fiction, who's representing this new adult genre, YA genre of books, and who are actually making deals, right? Because there's a ton of agents on Publishers Marketplace that have made 0 deals. And so what I did is I opened up a tab for every single one, and I read through every single one and qualified whether or not they were someone I wanted to query. And then I put them in priority order, and then I bucketed them into let me reach out to these people first, and then I'll do
Mm-hmm.
these people second. But the thing about it is a lot of them just have a query tracker form that you fill out. And so a lot of the information that you're inputting is just copy paste. Here's my title, here's my genre, here's how many words there are. They'll want some sort of like writer's resume or a bio. You shove that in there, and then you get a character count limited area to put in information about your book. Sometimes they'll have you upload an actual query letter, but a lot of them are just kind of like copy paste sections. They'll ask for comps. Some people will ask for like, do you have any other media or playlists that support your
Ooh,
novel?
they really
Yeah.
ask for that?
I mean, I think there was like 1 or 2 that asked for something outside of the norm, you know?
Cool.
But they do expect you to have a reason for wanting to query them. So you do have to do your research. But when I first started querying the second book, I thought that I was going to query the same amount of agents that I did the first time, which was around 10. And writing a personalized query letter for 10 agents is a lot of work, but
Yeah.
then they have stats in Query Tracker. That was like the average amount of queries that writers are doing are, I think it was 44. I was like,
Yeah.
oh. So if it's that big of a numbers game, and by the way, some of these agents are asking for 3 pages, 5 pages, 10 pages. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to ask yourself, how much effort should I put into making this query letter specialized for the agent if they're only going to read a couple of pages? I think when it comes into play is if you have some sort of intro into an agent, and then you could say like, hi, so-and-so agent, I'm so grateful to this person for introducing us, and I know that you've done X, Y, and Z, and I really loved Act W or whatever, and I think that you'd be a great fit for these reasons, and here's information about my book and my background. Then it makes sense.
Yeah.
But for the majority of the queries that you're submitting, it's very much like marketing speak about your book. And
Yeah. And
so it's a little bit soulless.
from what I've heard too, a lot of people are querying many more than 44.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I mean, I did
70 to
70.
100. Yeah.
Yeah.
A mutual acquaintance of ours did at least 75 for their book and no bites.
Yeah.
Um, but it sounds exhausting, and that you really do have to like, be like, okay, I'm gonna like figure out your list and be like, I'm gonna do these 5 this week. I'm going to do these 5 the next week. It's tough because obviously you start with the agents that are your dream agents.
Hmm.
And then how long do you wait? You know? must be that they are used to the fact that everyone's querying so many people that there's plenty of people getting emails where they're like, sorry, I decided to go in a different direction, both on the agent and the client side, but wild.
When I went to AWP, I did attend a panel on agents that a friend of mine was on, and they talked about getting an agent, finding an agent. And really, the thing is, at the same time, when you're doing all of this work and trying to get your book in front of all of these people, who you choose as your agent is so important. It is a marriage, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And what I found out that was wild is that a lot of them don't even have contracts. So they'll be like, yeah, I'll represent you, but there's nothing in writing, which is like, as someone who works in, business, I'm like, that's wild. I would have assumed that there would be a letter of representation with terms, but there's really not. So I think that's when you get into the little like Tracy Wolf situation where, and I forget the name of the agent that was actually a fault kind of has left my mind. But yeah, you can do all of that work and then hear nothing. And so it's very, discouraging. But the frame of the query letter itself, I was going back to that link that you sent me about that author who got all of the, remember she got like all of those offers of representation within like 24 hours of
Yeah.
querying.
Yes.
that that horrible woman. But she does share her query letter in that I guess Query Tracker has some interviews about how people
Mm-hmm.
have gotten offers, so that might be something worth taking a look at. But the frame of her query letter is different than mine, and I'm trying to remember back to where I got the frame of what we're supposed to write, because the way that I did it was an introduction of myself and a little bit about the books that have inspired me and the topics and the themes that are important to me. And then two short paragraphs about the book that was really pitching the book, which are
Mm-hmm.
very much a log line and elevator pitch about it and getting people intrigued about the idea and the concept so that they'll actually want to read the pages that you sent them. And then one paragraph about my writer's bio where I talk about the classes that I've took, the people that I've studied with, the workshops that I've attended, my mentors, etc. And that's it. Obviously you mentioned the genre and the number of words that are in the book as well, but this woman, Faith Gladwin, her whole letter is just about the book. It's
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs that are just about the book. And it's more of a mini synopsis with a bit of a teaser in it. So I find that interesting and wondering maybe that's the tack that I take next
Yeah.
time.
I wonder if that's also genre relevant or related. If the reason that she's doing that is because she was in like a vaguely romantasy
It's
genre.
gothic tinged adult speculative horror.
Oh, okay.
How's that
Wrong.
for a genre?
It's funny. Um, that is
But
one of
that kind of
those
sounds
rich
like your gothic tinged adult
that
speculative
it
horror.
does sound exactly like what I'm writing, actually. Sort of in the vein of like, I don't like to read what I'm writing. I'm reading so much horror now because there's horror elements in my book, and I hate reading it. I hate it.
Oh no.
Oh, it's so scary. I'm like, I have to like read it like only before 11 a.m. I need to
Oh
like cleanse
man.
myself all day.
Yeah, I always wonder about people who like horror because I have some friends, and actually my friend Lilium, who was the author that was on the AWP panel, her most recent novel is horror. And you would probably like it because it's like based in the fashion industry. You should read it. And that's not my thing. I do not like being scared. I don't like horror movies. Like some people love horror movies and horror shows. I can't stomach them. Like sitting there fast forwarding through all the scary parts.
I totally. I was thinking about agents. I was reading somewhere on the internet this past week about someone talking about their mistakes they made leading up to their debut novel. And one of them was around their first agent, who they did not name. But their first agent approached them and was effusive and was like, no edits to the book. Like, I just love it. And she was like, I should have known. And I'm technically a published author. I published my first book with Thought Catalog a long time ago. And I remember when I sent in my first draft, they also were like, "We love it." And that's when I was like, "Oh no. Oh no. Oh no." And I didn't have an agent, you know. They approached me just to have me write the book because they were doing like a new model. But as soon as they didn't give me edits on the book, I was like, this was a mistake. And that was same with that person. It's like, it's tough because you obviously want representation. But if someone comes to you and is like, I'll represent you, your writing's perfect, no edits, then you have to be like, wait, I need you to, I need you to want to shape me. So it's hard. I read a friend of mine many moons ago on her own newsletter was talking about the future of her newsletter. And she was saying in passing how an agents had approached her. And she was just like, that's not what I'm interested in. And I was like, hold the phone. Hold on a second. Agents have just approached you. Agents are just writing to you on Substack being like, I want to represent you. And like, obviously she didn't say what they said. And she glossed over it and was like, that's not what I'm interested in. And I was like, that's what I'm interested in. Like, what? What's happening over there? Who's reading your newsletter? And I had such a wave of jealousy. But I have to remind myself that I think that one of the ways I do want to go is like the traditional querying route. Like, I want to work for it in a way. In a way.
Why?
In a way.
Why? So,
I think it's because I was burned, you know? And it's like, I feel like I made my mistake and now I'm like, now I don't trust luck, basically, in this genre of life.
I get that. I think what I'm hearing is that you want to evaluate the agents, multiple agents, and try and make a decision about what's best for you and your work and who you want to work with. And I think that that's valid. And being in a position where you can choose amongst a couple of agents who are interested in working with you is the dream, right?
Yeah.
That's how you would want to do any business, is you would want to like send out an RFP and then review the proposals and then pick
Yeah.
the one that makes the most sense. You know, like when you're interviewing people for a job, you want to put them through a process so you can understand who you're going to best work with. And I have heard horror stories of people who had to fire their first agents because it was not working. But to be honest, when I was listening to that panel, quite a few of them got approached by agents who said, do you have a novel? Because they had seen their work in other formats in other places, whether they had a short story published in Sewanee Review, or they had a podcast and had an online presence or had a Substack. That happens.
Yeah. It
Where
does
people get
happen.
exposed to your writing and enjoy it and say, do you have a novel? And one of the women on the panel was just like, yes, I do. And she didn't. She's like, just lie. I have a novel.
Yep, I do. Sure
I
do.
have a novel for you.
Gosh,
Sure
it's so
do.
close to being done.
Almost
You
here.
wouldn't even know it.
Yeah, just polishing it up a little bit. So that does happen. And I don't know. I don't know what and how that happens for some people and it doesn't for others. And to be honest, I was at an event last night for Tia Williams and Kennedy Ryan, and they are two romance writers. Both have New York Times bestselling novels that came out, and they're our age. And I was looking at them thinking, is that ever going to be me? You know?
Yeah.
But one thing that I was thinking about, Tia Williams, she has a YA book that came out, and her daughter, who was 16, was inspiration for one of the characters in it. And so she was on Good Morning America with her daughter talking about her book. And as you were talking about narrating the book with woods on your back, I was thinking, this is what Kelton is going to talk about when she's on Good Morning America, about how she wrote her book. She verbalized her book with her baby on the back walking through the Colorado wilderness.
Listen, if I get famous from writing my book, people are going to hate me. I'm going to be like, oh, I was just climbing mountains with my baby on my back, narrating scenes into my phone before coming home and working my 6 clients and running my podcast and my newsletter. You just sneak it in when you can. I'd be like, this bitch. But I love that fantasy for me. I really do.
I'm manifesting it for you. I can see it happening. As those women on the trail said, you're just charming enough to make it happen, Kelton.
Oh man, I this week a friend of mine who is a best-selling author, she told me that she forwarded my newsletter to her agent. She was like, no promises. This isn't really their genre, but she was like, I was just really surprised to hear you don't have an agent. And that you're not like already doing that. And so I think there is something to, publicly being like, I am looking for representation. And like you mentioned something earlier about someone's work being seen in a literary review first. And I have been thinking about that a lot where yeah, obviously it's great that I have a Substack, but it's like that's a private newsletter is not like something an agent will always just happen upon. Whereas if you are getting published in literary reviews in like dream publications like the New Yorker and stuff, that is an easy way for agents to swoop you up, like classic cat person kind of story, where you write something good enough that they're like, "Hey, I want you." And so I just
Mhm.
wondering recently, like if I should be dedicating like one, so I do 4 free essays a month. If I should make one of those weeks not online, like I should just not put it on my newsletter and just be like, this one I'm submitting somewhere. Whichever one is the best of the month, it gets a submission first to see if it can get published to a wider audience because I can always use my own work to publish it on my Substack later. Um, and because I'm like, I need to start like being more out there, I think. But at the same time, are you pursuing side pubs at all while you're working on your novel?
In the back of my head, I always think about it. And the thing is, I was just remembering that panel also. I think, if not all of them, 3 out of 4 of them all have MFAs
Oh, of course they do.
from like Columbia, from storied and expensive programs. And the thing about literary journals is a lot of them also are feeders from MFA programs. And, things get sent to them from teachers in those programs. And again, it's just another walled garden that is
Mm-hmm.
hard to break into if you're not part of that community. So, yes, I have submitted to literary journals in the past. And the way that my teacher, Dr. Elizabeth Sharp McKenna, had said about it is like there is a time for writing and a time for submitting. You can like take a little bit of time apart and just like focus on that and then put that down, whether things hit or not, and then go back to actually doing the work over here. It's not something that you can do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you kind of have to carve out time for. And I'm not a short story writer, so it's really hard for me to
Yeah.
find parts of work or pieces of work that hit the word count that people are looking to publish. But Kelton, I just had a
Mm-hmm.
thought come to me. I sent Kelton this post from Alexander Chi, who is an essayist and has published a book of essays. How many essays have you published on Shangri-Logs?
160 plus?
I'm sure you could cobble together an essay collection that is publishable in those 160 essays. I'm
Yeah,
sure you can.
I'm sure I could, but I will say that I've thought about that because I see some submissions for personal essays pop up every once in a while for literary places. And when I go back and read some of these essays, they just require to me so much editing. There is, which I just, when am I going to do that? And like all this effort for something that's not guaranteed that I'm trying to shove into this bracket that they've set up. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm just sending around my 8 favorite essays I've ever written. It's always they always need to be molded into what that that submission needs. And I did that once and it took a bunch of time and they both got rejected. And I was like, this is, I'm trying to look at what is making me money and what is building my brand. And it's tough. But like having to deliver twice a week is a grueling writing deadline. And being able to carve something out from that to submit elsewhere is really challenging. And I've carved as much time as I can to just write the novel. We have one more episode before this season wraps. And I am thinking about, okay, that means that you still get Friday mornings all summer or another morning. Ben and I will look at the schedule once we complete this and think about how we're allocating our days to make sure we're both getting our work done. But it's tough. Am I pursuing the book? Am I pursuing my name? Am I pursuing clout? And you can't do all of them well. And so like in the back of your mind, you got to be like, I'm hoping that luck will just show up at the party and spill her coffee all over me. So
I don't know how essay collections work necessarily, but I feel with no evidence whatsoever that they probably work a lot more along the lines of nonfiction where you don't have to write the whole thing. You can just write a proposal and a pitch. And because you do have so many essays written and a subscriber base, I bet you could write some pitches to agents for an essay collection. And then once you secured one, work with them on picking the best ones and editing them. You just have to have a theme or an angle that brings all of the essays under an umbrella that makes sense. But I feel like there's something here for you. And I know without having to do all that editing that you were talking about upfront.
It's interesting you say that because that friend who sent my Substack to their agent, this is what she said. She was like, why are you... She's like, good for you that you want to write a novel. She's like, but you already have everything for a book. And she's like, and you could just write more of the stuff that you obviously love to write and people would read it. And I think in the back of my mind, I'm a little burned from when that first book was published, Anonymous Asked with Thought Catalog. It had some new stuff, but it was mainly edited old stuff. And when readers read it, a lot of them were like, I read it before. I wanted it to be all new. And so I think about that with this audience that I have. It's like, I think I would have to write all new stuff, which is fine. But I'm talking to that friend next week about like what a memoir proposal looks like. Because you're right, I would have to have like a theme, that's one of the beauties of like H is for Hawk, is that there's this through line pulling you through the essays.
Yeah. I do feel like there is a theme within you. I feel like there is a essay collection book proposal that's just on the outskirts of your mind that you haven't seen yet. I'm not one to ever discourage someone from working on a novel, but if the immediate goal is figuring out a way to make money from your writing, to continue to work and build your audience, you have this incredible resource of essays that you have written. And maybe working on the novel is the hardest way to get you to where you want to be in the immediate term. Not to say that you abandon it, but are you making it harder for yourself than it needs to be?
It's so interesting you say that because I was having a conversation with Ben this week where we were talking about our future careers and our paths in life. And he was like, don't you just want to be a novelist? And I was like, no. I was like, it is easily one of the hardest things I've ever done. I have to make myself do it. I am enjoying it. I love the story. I'm excited for it to be a final story that I can share, whether that's in the Big Five or just on my newsletter. But I was like, that is not my goal in life, is to be a fiction novelist squirreling away at home panicking about plot points. I was like, I have so many other ways I want to bring my work to life, and I feel like one of the most important ways for me is the way I'm already doing it. So it's just it is serendipitous that you are mentioning this the same week someone else is to me. as I think about, what do I want to be doing? How do I want to be bringing it to life?
I understand it feeling daunting when you asked me if I have plans to send things out to literary journals. I was like, sure, theoretically, yes. I loved theater and I took classes in theater at UCLA, but the rejection would kill me. Like, that is why I never pursued acting, is it's just, I am a soft-skinned little baby. So, even going through the querying process is just, oh, I got my rejection from Breadloaf, by the way. I had to like
Oh,
search for it in my inbox. It's like, I should have heard from Breadloaf by now. And there it was, which I knew was going to happen because I totally half-assed that application. I should have known better,
ah,
but I know it's fine. But yeah, it's the rejection and the waiting is hard. And then on the other end, I have a lot of empathy for agents because they get so many inbounds from people that
millions
probably are, yeah.
of books are in the slush pile every year, which is crazy,
Hmm.
crazy. And I
Hmm.
cannot imagine like the best agents, when you flip to the back of like a book that you've loved, you're like, oh, I'll query whoever was the agent for Lessons in Chemistry or for Remarkably Bright Creatures
Yeah.
or for Akatar. And it's like,
Yeah.
can you imagine their inboxes right now?
Yeah.
Especially, I don't know who the Sarah J. Maas's agent is, but I can. Can you imagine the level of dreck in her inbox? I'm assuming
Well,
it's a she. It could
she's
be a he.
closed. She's definitely closed to querying, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is like you can do all this work and create a list and then have people that you want to query and they'll be closed. They'll be like, I
Yeah.
am not accepting any more queries from now until
I
the end of the year,
started my
you know?
list this week. I started just thinking about who agents would be. Just because I don't know anything about it and I don't want to get to finish and be like noob in even researching it. And the first person I looked up, her inbox was closed. And I
Yeah.
was like, interesting. Cool.
Some of them
And
will
that
open up, but
yeah,
yeah,
some of
you
them
have
will
to
open up.
pay attention.
And it made me think about, the people I know who are the authors I know who are successful are all mainly memoir nonfiction. And obviously I'm going to reach out to everyone I know who's a success in the publishing industry as soon as I have something to sell. But it's interesting reaching out to someone to be like, "Hey, does your agent know any fiction agents?" So it's like, it's true. Maybe I should be looking at the bulk of work that I already have. But oh, it's hard out there. Are there any
Yeah.
agents that you haven't? Well, you must have a really different list for this current project versus Unforgettable.
I don't have a list at all for this current project. I haven't even thought about it yet.
Oh, that's sort of amazing. It's a
Yeah,
fresh it's a fresh start.
yeah, it is a fresh start. The sad thing is that I've burnt all of my I don't know if I can go out to the people that I've already gone out to ask for help this time.
Why? How did you burn it? Like you asked and it
It's
didn't
the
work,
second
but
time. It's the second time. I mean, I have former bosses from HarperCollins that I feel like if I were like, "Hey, I have another new book." Like, do you know this agent and do you mind introducing me? You know, I'm happy to kind of like try again. It takes a lot.
yeah.
I'm not a person that does that often, which is
Yeah.
silly because the people who do ask for help and don't care, maybe they're annoying to some people, but they get what they want. You have to ask for what you want to get what you want. And so I need to
Yeah.
be a little bit shameless, I guess,
Yeah. I
in
and I
my pursuit of this project.
I think that's true. And it sucks. I also hate doing that. It feels so embarrassing, especially when you don't have, for me at least, I can say that when I don't have anything I feel like I can offer in return. There like, even right now I'm working on a piece for the Guardian and I'm reaching out to sources to get quotes about things. And there's this huge parts of me that wants to be like, for your time, I'll give you a $50 Visa gift certificate. Just because I'm like, I'm so sorry to bother you. Even though, I'm reaching out to people about things they're super passionate about. And, in theory, a lot of people want to be quoted in the Guardian. So, but I feel you. I feel bad asking for people's time.
Yeah. And to be fair, that is just, well, I don't want to say to be fair, but here's the thing. I actually don't think people are that annoyed when you ask for help.
No, when
Sometimes
people
maybe.
when people ask me for help, oh my god, I want to help. I want to help. I love.
Mhm.
Well, I guess you know what? I should caveat this. Here is a way I don't like to be asked for help. I had made a new friend once upon a time. Reached out to me because they came upon some of my writing and were like, we live in a similar area. We share similar interests. I'd love to be friends. We tried to be friends and it didn't work. We didn't click. Godspeed to both of us. Marry on our way. Don't talk for a year. And then this person reaches out to me and she's like, "Hey, how are you? Oh my God, your life looks so good right now. What are you up to?" And I told her in like a reply text one, and she was like, "That's so great. By the way, I opened a new business and I'd love if you promoted it on your Instagram."
Ew.
And I was like, oh, absolutely not. And the thing is, if she had just been honest, if she had texted me and been like, "Hey, I know it's been a really long time and we haven't spoken in forever. I'm working on a new business and you feel like a person who knows a lot about how to start something new. I'd love to talk to you about it. And if you're open to it, I would give you a piece and maybe you could share it on your Instagram." That message to me is so different than the false bullshit of being like, "How are you, babe? Miss you. By the way, will you do this thing for me for free?" I'm like, absolutely, I won't. So I think for
Yeah.
me, the key when I'm asking someone for help is being like honest about what I'm coming with and what I have in return, which might be nothing. So when I do ask for help, I sometimes I do say, I'm like, I wish there was something I could do for you in return. So please let me know if there's anything you can think of. But when people do ask with authenticity and kindness and genuineness, then I want to help. I
Yeah.
want to help.
Yeah. And I guess the time I've had people ask me for help recently and then ask for help again. And sometimes it does feel a little transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that doesn't feel great. You're kind of like, okay, yeah, I just helped you, but sure. I think what I was thinking about and what's holding me back from wanting to ask again is probably insecurity about,
Mm-hmm.
is this, are they like, do they think I'm good enough to be asking for these things? Or am I confident enough in my project that I feel like it's worthwhile having them reach out to their contact on my behalf? I think that if you are really confident in your project and what you've written and the work that you've done, then you should feel confident about asking for help, because the thing is that you are asking someone to almost vouch for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to have that person has to believe that you like the work that you're doing is good and has gone through multiple rounds of edits and revisions and is ready for them to put in front. Because, you know, if I ask my old bosses at HarperCollins, like, hey, can you connect me with this agent at WME? And they take a look at it and they're like, why are you recommending this crap to me? They're not going to
Mm-hmm.
trust damage their relationship. So I think
Yeah.
doing the work in advance and not querying too early. I think that that's the one thing that I've heard from lots of people is, unfortunately, your work has to be ready. It has to be at the level of like
Yeah.
as good as you can possibly get it without any additional help before you put it out there into the wild. It has to be beyond reproach, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because you want to put your best foot forward, and why would you want to spend your capital of your first impression with this agent with messy, sloppy, half put together work, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I get the impulse to go fast, It's like that fucking tech nonsense of like move fast and break shit. It's like that doesn't work here.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
maybe for some people it does. Like some people like life is always the day is always sunny and luck's always on their side and they can just smile at an agent and get a deal. I don't know, but it's not, she ain't me. So I don't know. This episode about querying is the one that I didn't want to have. You know, you didn't want to talk about AI. I didn't want to talk about querying because it's been like almost traumatic to go
Yeah.
through. It's a lot of work for nothing. To your point, you said, you know, you put all this effort into something and nothing comes of it. You're like, well, I just like wasted my time.
Yeah, and I
Um,
appreciate the people there's people I've followed over the years on various platforms who will post every rejection and they'll celebrate it as like they're like, building blocks of a career, trying to reframe how they're feeling about it. But you can still feel it. You're like, man, that sucks. Man, another one. Oh boy, that's another one.
yeah.
And that's brutal.
I guess what
But
softens the blow a little bit is that a lot of them are just forms. They're just like,
yeah.
insert name here, unfortunately, blah, 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 blah.
Blah blah blah.
Um, yeah. But, you know, my teacher, Mark Sarvis, he always says that it's not a rejection unless they read the entire thing and say no. But getting them to read the whole thing, I told you
Yeah.
I had 3 agents request the full manuscript, and only one of them actually sent me anything back. And her rejection was, we talked about this.
Yeah.
It's good, but I don't think that I have bandwidth to represent you. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
it's tricky. Yeah, well, I haven't started my process of agent looking. No agents have ever spoken to me. I don't have one if you're an agent. But maybe it's time for me to think about my memoir proposal. I should read a few. I should read some books of essays.
well, when you eventually look for an agent, finding one that represents both memoir and fiction, I don't know if there are a lot of people who do that, but maybe there are a few, so that you
Yeah, and
could
I've
find
read
someone that can represent all of your projects.
Yeah, and I have read stories of people who had changed agents amicably or had agents that represented different parts of their work. So, I don't want to scare myself off or other people listening that you can't change. You can't evolve. You can't meet new people. Your agent can't find a new calling in life. There are
Yeah,
stories of things going right when it seems like they could have gone wrong.
mhm,
But we're gonna have to have an agent on next season.
definitely. Plan for season 2 is to have some guests. I think we wanted to flesh out season 1 and just feel out what kind of format worked for us. But I have a list of people that I think we
We
should
got a
talk
laundry
to for the
list.
next season. Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be fun to have some people join the Pen Pals pod pod of people.
All right. Are we ready to talk goals for next week?
Mm, sure.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
goals.
Bleh.
Goals. How are your alpha readers doing?
Yeah, so my mom finished reading my book, of course.
Aw.
We were talking about it in the car, and it's so fun to hear people talk about your characters to you.
Yeah.
So she had some things that she had feedback on, which is great. She's going to compile all of her notes and send them to me next week. And then in an hour, I'm going to talk to my other alpha reader and go through all of the feedback that she had for me. She sent me written notes, but we're going to just talk through it a bit. So that will be fun. I'm just waiting on one more. I have an understanding of the things that I want to work out for this next round of revision.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk next week about summer plans, but I feel like
Yeah.
I kind of know. I'm starting to feel like I know what I'm going to be working on next. I completely failed to wake up early this week whatsoever. So I think that unless I have work to do, writing to do, it's really hard for
Yeah.
me to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Despite every effort. I mean, my alarm went off at 5, 5:30, 6, 6:30, like every single day trying to get up. So I hurt myself in that way. I could have just slept in. I think that for this next week, for me, it's really about getting all of those notes and figuring out what I'm going to be doing for the summer. But I do think next week, one thing that we could talk about is endings because they're not easy.
I
And we're going to
bet.
have the end of the season. So it'll be kind of like something we can use to tie a bow on season 1, but that is an area that I'm going to have to work on for sure. How about you? What are your plans for the next week?
What are my plans for the next week? This week is W3's first birthday. So, it's hard looking at that date because that was sort of the initial goal I'd set for myself for a
Mhm.
first draft. And so seeing that come and go it's both deflating and motivating. I still, one thing I'm grateful for is that as I approach that day, I still feel like this novel has the legs that I need it to. It doesn't feel like, oh, it's just another idea I can let go. It does feel like it's something I'm thinking about all the time and processing constantly and living with my characters. And so I'm happy about that. And I think that this week I should I should do is I should just put those scenes that are in my phone notes into Scrivener. I just kind of want to get them in and over and like in line with where they belong in the book, and so that I can see the word count change. I just want to see it go up a little because as I've been moving things around, it feels like it has gone more down than it has gone up as I take things that don't make sense out. And so now I want to see it go up a little. So I'm going to move those over. I'm going to think a little bit about what other services I can use to be narrating on the trail without data or reception so that it's easier in the future. Because this is going to be a lot of editing and that I'm just like not looking forward to doing. So my goals are move those scenes over, fully edit them, find a new service to do that with, and probably talk to Ben about what our summer schedule is like.
Sounds like a plan.
And throw W3 a little, a little birthday.
How are you feeling about him turning 1?
I don't really have any feelings about it at all, if I'm being perfectly honest. I have not felt very saccharine. I don't miss him being a newborn. Like everybody's just like, oh my God, he's a toddler now. Like, how's it feel? And I'm like, it feels amazing. It feels amazing that he's like a real human with like personality and that he can do things on his own. I don't miss him being little at all. So, if there's anything I'm struggling with, it's other people being like, oh. But, that's my own private problem in motherhood. So I'll deal with it on my own.
I have this theory that has more to do with people's feelings around their own mortality and aging and being out of that
Hmm.
stage of life. And I even myself, I was watching The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and they're all getting pregnant, and one of the women has a baby, and I was like watching the baby like put his little head on her chest, and I was like, oh, I remember when my babies did that. And you forget about how hard it is because there are these precious moments, but it's so hard. It is so hard. And yeah, of
Yeah.
course, like everyone's like, I just having all of these big feelings about them turning 1.
Yeah. And I listen,
No.
anyone who wants to come up to me and say, I miss having a baby that small, by all means, tell me what you miss about your life. I love to hear it. But people who come up to me and say, you will miss when he
Hmm.
is this small, I am I am like one poorly medicated day away from just smashing their head into the shelf next to me. Nothing drives me crazier than when people tell me how I will feel, even if it's accurate. Don't tell me that. Tell me your own experience because that is what someone is talking about. They're saying what they experienced.
Yeah.
So, so phrase it that
I
way. Say you missed it. Just lean into what you're feeling and tell me the truth. No need to be an oracle.
know. I just feel more and more every day, especially when I hear that man who is the president speak on any platform, that people have lost the meaning and sense of words and cannot communicate effectively anymore. And they
Hmm.
just vomit out things that with no understanding of how it's going to actually be received by the other person. So I'm excited for Woods to move into ages where he's a little bit more autonomous and maybe doesn't have as many tummy problems.
Wow,
Looking forward to that for you.
when that boy can finally poop, what a day it'll be.
I'm sure he'll be thrilled too.
All right, we got big goals for this week. So, where can the people tell me about how I should be narrating my scenes without reception?
Well, I have some ideas for you, but I'll share them offline. If people want to reach out to us, oh my God, I almost forgot. I went to that event last night, the Tia Williams and Kennedy Ryan event, and I bought 2 tickets thinking that one of my friends would want to come with me, and then not asking any of them until the last second. And then they all said no. And I don't know why I was surprised. But with those 2 tickets came a copy of each of their new books. And so I have a copy of Tia Williams' new book, Audrey and Bash Are Just Friends, and Kennedy Ryan's new book, Can't Get Enough, that I will be giving away to one of our listeners. So if you want a copy, email us at officialpenpalspod@gmail.com or DM us at penpalspod on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or wherever, because literally I will give it to whomever reaches out and asks for it, one or both. They're excellent authors. You just got to be first. So if you want one of these books, send us a note and I will mail it to you.
What an amazing giveaway. All right. On that uplifting note, email us, DM us, etc. And happy writing.
Have a great week. Happy writing.